Eric, are we live?
Yes, we are live.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's symposium on survivorship. We are welcome everyone as they begin to load in. We have hundreds of people that have signed up for today's symposium from all across the United States. It's going to take just a minute for everyone to load in. So if you'll give us just a minute, we'll get started. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone again. I'm Ann Garth-Taylor. I'm with AIM at Melanoma. I'm the Director of Community Engagement. This is a very exciting day for AIM at Melanoma because this is the first survivorship symposium that we have hosted. We are an organization that was founded 20 years ago by Val Guild after her daughter Charlie was passed away after she was diagnosed with melanoma. In the ensuing 20 years, there's been a lot of progress with research and treatment. And alongside of that, then the prognosis for survivorship has improved. And with that, the rise of survivorship medicine, such that today we are doing the first of an entire symposium dedicated entirely to that subject. I want to thank Dr. Raymond Liu for serving as our moderator and for guiding us through our cancer and our question and answer period. We will have a live question and answer period at the end. But I want to also be sure and thank our presenters today. I want to thank Dr. Siegel and Sammy Mansfield and Dr. Trung for serving as our experts in this topic and for their collective wisdom. I know that there's going to be a lot of questions for our panelists today. And so how you are going to be able to get questions for our panelists is either through, if you're viewing on Zoom, if you look at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a tab there, and that tab says Q&A. If you will put your questions in there, then Dr. Liu will be able to go through those, and we're going to try to get as many answered as possible. If you are joining us on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, then if you'll put your questions into the comment section, we'll transfer them over to the Q&A. And so with that, I'm going to turn the symposium over to Dr. Liu, and we'll get started. Thank you so much, Dr. Liu.
Thank you so much, Ann. So welcome to AIM Melanoma's first inaugural Survivorship Symposium. I'm Dr. Raymond Liu, Director of Research for the Hematology Oncology Service Line at Kaiser Permanente and the Medical Director of the KP San Francisco Cancer Center. I've been your host for AIM Melanoma's Beyond the Clinic podcast series and will be your moderator today for the symposium. So I did want to first thank AIM Melanoma for making this event possible. The very fact that we have a survivorship symposium is testament to the medical advances over the last decades, but also to AIM Melanoma's recognition that these advances must be coupled with support for our community. Thank you for the attendees coming today. Our time is our most precious resource. You've heard me say that in the podcast a lot of times, and I hope you'll find value in the support information we are providing today. So just as a reminder, your feedback and comments are valuable and welcome. I wanted to acknowledge those that submitted comments ahead of the symposium, and you can also enter them at any time, as I mentioned, and we will address as many as we can with our experts today in the 30-minute Q&A at the end of the symposium today. So without further ado, I want to introduce our agenda and all-star speaker lineup today. We'll be covering a broad spectrum of topics that you've seen on flyers and announcements, from the language of cancer, some wellness tips on lifestyle, and how to manage symptoms of melanoma treatment. Our first speaker has been selected as one of the 100 most influential women in oncology in OncoDaily this year. It's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Samantha Siegel, or Dr. Sam as she calls herself, as the Director of Survivorship Medicine at Kaiser Permanente San Francisco. She has founded the field of survivorship medicine for our integrated healthcare system and will be your new host for AIM Melanoma's Beyond the Clinic podcast series. Thank you, Sam, for coming today and sharing your thoughts on the language of cancer.
Thank you so much for having me. I am really excited to share about this topic. So without further ado, let's give it a go here. All right. I love this quote. I'll start off here. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. Are you guys seeing my slides?
Yes, Dr. Sam, you are in presenter view. Do you want to take it out of presenter view?
Okay, give me one sec here. I think maybe how I'm sharing. Let's see, share.
Yeah, just click on the start the slideshow.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes, that's it right there. Oh no, but if you hit show presenter view, then we'll see everything that you're seeing.
Oh, still.
Yeah, so yeah, don't click on show presenter view.
Okay. Okay. Is this looking okay for you guys?
And go ahead and hit start slideshow.
Okay. I would like to see my notes though, if
Okay,
that's
so if you want
possible.
to see your notes,
Uh-huh.
you probably have to share your full screen and then put the notes on one screen, but have the presentation on the other screen.
Okay. I do apologize, everybody. Um, okay. How about this? Are you just seeing?
Right there, we see the presentation fine.
Okay, that's fine. I'll do it without my notes. Okay. So I love this quote. The limits of my language means the limits of my world. So why am I here to talk to you about the importance of language today? Why is language important overall? It's communication, it's how we interact with one another, and it's identity formation. I'm not here to say that there's a right way or a wrong way to use language. Not here to shame anybody. I'm here to offer choices where perhaps there didn't seem like there were any before. I don't know if any of you are Brene Brown fans like I am, but in her book, The Atlas of the Heart, she talks about the importance of language, and the more emotional language that we have to describe our experiences, the more we're able to help ourselves. And I love this quote as well. This is a very popular quote in the addiction recovery community, but it was, I think, attributed to this Dr. Dan Siegel, no relation to me. But if you can name it, you can tame it. If you have the words to describe your experience, the better you can get help for yourself and describe what you're going through. So today I want to talk about the language of cancer as it pertains to kind of three different areas. One is the language of cancer process overall. The second one is the language of cancer and personal narrative and experiences. And lastly, the language and current landscape of survivorship medicine. So cancer process. Anybody feel that immediately after they developed a new symptom or were diagnosed that they suddenly entered into a parallel reality, a very confusing one where people are suddenly using an entirely different vocabulary that you've never heard before, and there's a lot of trauma going on, and it feels like there's a lack of transparency? That definitely was the case for me when I first got diagnosed. And I think almost every single day in my office, I hear people talking about these concepts and how difficult it is to try and understand what is happening when they've just received very difficult news. And there are a lot of important parts in the beginning of the cancer process. So the confusion in cancer, again, it feels like there's this whole new language. Suddenly, as soon as people are diagnosed or they're going through the diagnostic process, people are throwing out words like staging and biomarkers, prognosis, Breslow's depth, Gleason scores, depending on the type of cancer that people have. And Other times, people even throw out terms like, I'm another member on the team. And while people are really well intended when they refer to this team, I hear all the time that many patients and their care partners have no idea who this so-called team is. And if there is a team, they feel like they're the ones quarterbacking between all the various members on the team. And then there's the trauma in cancer. People often arrive at the start line of treatment carrying so many things. One of the first questions that I ask people when they come to my office in my oncoprimary clinic, which is a primary care practice that is focused on people that have active cancer, suspected cancer, or history of cancer, is I ask them, do you have anything that you want to share with me about your diagnostic process or about any family members that have been previously diagnosed with cancer? I think it's really important to share that. And I try to allow a space for that before, sometimes even before people have received that pathology report that confirms that they have cancer. And the reason is that for many people, they were going through diagnostic runaround for months. People had symptoms for a long time and maybe couldn't really tell what was going on, or they had a symptom and they couldn't get an appointment for months, or they went to the emergency room with this symptom, had a scan, and then received some really hard and sometimes inaccurate news. And then we're just kind of playing catch up. So before people even arrive at the start line of that first visit with oncology, they're carrying all of this. And there can be a lack of trust in the medical system, a lack of trust in themselves, and there's nowhere to unpack it. And I believe that this all contributes to sort of a reduced ability to hear the new information that's going on, to absorb the new language, and to be really engaged in the process of one's cancer. So even if that's not offered to you as an option, I think it's really important, if you start with somebody new and you get the feeling that you can trust them, to say, hey, can I tell you about my diagnostic process? A lot of things went down, and I'd like to share all of this with you, because I need to just get it out so that we can start with a clean slate and move forward. And then there's this kind of transparency issue, and I think it's really unintentional in most cases. Right now, the status quo is that for a lot of people, when they're going through the diagnostic and the staging process, also depending on, it varies from cancer to cancer, but there are many different pieces of information that we need before the oncologist, the medical oncologist, the surgical oncologist can make a decision about the treatment plan, can counsel about prognosis. And these things might include scans, molecular testing, biomarkers, MRI of the brain. There's all these different pieces of information that need to be collected before that start line in oncology can give really good information about, hey, here's the path forward. So the status quo right now is that most patients are just left in waiting with no kind of information. They're just sort of getting all these tests, feeling really terrified about what's happening, and there's not a lot of conversation that's happening with them. And I think there's a lot of different reasons behind this. Sometimes it might be that the person who is doing the information gathering of all these various tests and scans might not be the one who feels really medically qualified to have that conversation about what it all means and what it entails. Um, and so my thought as I was dreaming up our Onco Primary Clinic pilot program that we started was that, well, I think there is something to tell people. Why don't we just tell them that? Like, these are all the different pieces of information that we need in order to help your oncologist at that first appointment have that really rich and productive conversation that's going to give you the answers that you really want as a human going through this process. Like, am I going to be able to take care of my kids going through cancer? What are the next 6 months or a year of my life going to look like? Am I going to be able to continue doing the things that I love? I also think that there are a lot of other things that we can do in this period, like assessing somebody's metabolic and cardiovascular health, checking their other medical conditions and going over their medication list and getting rid of things that they haven't refilled for 10 years, but might be unsafe to combine with other things. Um, checking people's vaccination status, assessing people's employment status or their financial well-being, and if they might be at risk for severe financial toxicity going forward, assessing social and emotional well-being and psychiatric history, knowing that in many different medication regimens that we give in cancer care, including melanoma, there are often high doses of steroids or medications that can impact brain and neurological function. And so knowing if somebody has had issues in the past can be really important. And you can do all those things while you're waiting and make that process available and transparent for patients. And the other piece of transparency I think that's really important to touch on nowadays is that sometimes the pendulum has swung way too far the other direction and there's too much transparency. There are so many instances where I, as a patient, or even my own patients, have experienced getting their own results, their own scans, like right away, lightning speed. You get a scan, you get the result like within an hour, and it pops up, and you can't not look at it once it's there. But you don't have any kind of therapeutic conversation with the person that ordered that scan, sometimes for days, weeks, and in some cases, even months. And again, that could be due to a lot of different things. There are these new kind of medical transparency laws that require this information to be released automatically. And I do think that that's a good thing, but there's this time coordination aspect where your very well-meaning primary doctor or oncologist might, be in the office, super busy going room to room and just hasn't had a chance to get back to their office and see that scan pop up and be able to sit and call you and kind of debrief about what it all means. They might be on call in the hospital and not even looking at that information that's coming in the in basket. They might be on vacation when that result comes back. And it can be devastating. I'll never forget, receiving the results of my PET scan that confirmed my lymphoma had relapsed. And I got that news from the computer without a conversation with my oncologist. And I knew that there would be a plan, but I really had this thought, like, I can see how somebody might receive this information and do something really drastic, feeling, quite hopeless. So there's some real issues with transparency and the kind of sequencing of early diagnostic processes in cancer. So I love this quote by Michael Douglas: "Cancer did not bring me to my knees, it brought me to my feet." Next, I want to move on to the language, from the language of process to the language of experience and personal narrative in cancer. There are so many really important words that I learned being deeply involved in the survivorship community, being aware of concepts like battle language, scanxiety and fear of cancer recurrence, or FCR, body betrayal, reestablishing body trust, grief, humor, healing being separate from curing, and even the word metaviver. So I just want to touch on battle language. There's this really interesting story that happened recently. I was on a call. I work for Kaiser Permanente, and I was on this national call for our cancer line with hundreds of different clinicians on the call. And at the very end of the call, somebody put something in the Teams chat advertising about an event that we had coming up called Fighting Cancer with Kaiser. And I put in the comments what I thought was a pretty innocuous comment, like, "Hey guys, any chance that in the future we might rebrand this event and call it Facing Cancer with Kaiser?" Battle language is a narrative that doesn't resonate with everybody, and some people just find it, that it's really imposed on them by society, and that, something like facing cancer implies more of a partnership instead of this win-loss and battle language. And to my shock, somebody thumbs down the comment, and I didn't look and see who it was, but I shame spiraled for about 5 minutes. And then after I recovered from that, I was trying to think so deeply about, like, what's that about? And why did somebody thumbs down that comment? And I think my heart settled on the fact that cancer is extremely emotional. It's emotional for patients, for care partners, and I think it's emotional even for the clinicians who take care of the patients. And when it comes to battle language, even in one human experience, one person's cancer experience, I think there are times where it absolutely feels like a battle. I know that during my transplant, it really felt like a nuke bomb was going off inside of me with the chemicals and everything. Um, but then there were other parts of that same experience where the body language absolutely didn't resonate, and it felt like I wanted to focus on self-love and healing my body. And there's a lot of people that feel that way. That the win-loss language doesn't resonate. And especially people who are diagnosed with late stage, where, what they're hoping for their outcome is life prolongation and living a really long time, but they may never achieve an end of active treatment or go into complete remission. And how does body language make them feel? And I'll never forget a story from one of my close friends who passed from leukemia in her 20s. And she had her fiance read at her memorial service. He read a quote from her that said, "After I'm gone, please don't say that I lost my battle. They gave me 6 weeks when I was diagnosed, and I danced for 2.5 years." And that really stuck with me. So the reason that I bring up body language is not to say that it's right or wrong, but just to make people aware that there's a choice there. And if that narrative doesn't resonate with you, then just say that. You don't have to take that on. So the next narrative is about scanxiety. And oh my gosh, this one also really resonates with me and with a lot of people. Scanxiety is this feeling like the next scan that's coming up might determine your foreseeable future, or the feeling that you're living in between scans, or just this intense anticipation leading up to your scan with kind of fear or ruminative thoughts, making it difficult to sort of engage in life. It's a thing. Someone told me that there might have even been an article in the New York Times this past week about scanxiety. So I think there's growing awareness about the emotional experience of what it's like to be living between scans. And then there's also this concept of body betrayal and reestablishing body trust. Many people describe to me the feeling of having to forgive themselves for maybe not recognizing the sign of cancer or the symptoms. I know that this is something that I can relate with on a personal level. It took couple of months before I realized that being so tired and falling asleep at 8 o'clock and having a cough that I was attributing to the wildfires ended up being cancer. And I felt it took a while to forgive myself for not realizing that something really serious was going on with my body. And a lot of my patients can relate with this feeling of body betrayal. And how could this have been happening in my body when I was a vegetarian marathon runner, or I used sun protection all the time. How could I have developed melanoma? People feeling so betrayed by their body. And then some people feel that they have to forgive themselves because they actually did seek help. They went to a medical appointment and they were reassured, maybe without a test, about the symptoms that they were having, or they had an initial test that turned out okay, didn't show anything, but their intuition was telling them that something was really wrong, and they just sort of accepted that first test and didn't press on. And people really harbor sometimes some self-guilt about that and have to work on the forgiveness aspect of it. So, and then another important aspect is kind of learning how to be in your body again, learning how to physically inhabit your body after being diagnosed with cancer. A lot of what people describe to me in the fear of cancer recurrence kind of experience is that it's really hard to sort of learn how to be tuned in enough that you're sort of being aware of new symptoms that are coming up, and bring those symptoms to your medical team's attention. Could it be something? Could it be a recurrence? Could it be a complication from treatment? So being tuned in enough to listen to your body and new symptoms, but not being so tuned in that every single bodily sensation kind of sends you into an emotional tailspin, being really scared or overly alarmed at, something that might not be dangerous. So that's a process, and it needs attention and a narrative. And then we probably have a lot of metavivors on this call, people who may not even be aware of the term metavivor. A metavivor is a person living with active metastatic disease. And metavivors are becoming increasingly common with the advent of targeted therapy and immunotherapy, all the different therapeutic options that are allowing people to live active and full lives with late-stage cancer. And I think metavivors have shown us a very important aspect in the cancer survivorship space, that healing and thriving are not necessarily synonymous with curing. I have quite a few patients now that are living extremely full lives. They're working, they're playing guitar, they're painting, they're jogging, they're doing many different things in their lives, and they're not cured. And they're living with cancer as a chronic condition. And this population of patients, many of them, my friends, have shown me that it's really important to consider my metavivors in the survivorship space. So survivorship, surveillance is not survivorship. I'm going to say that again because that is really important. Surveillance is not survivorship. And what does that mean? That means that, surveillance, which is how we monitor people for a recurrence of their cancer or a progression, or for complications of treatment, that is not synonymous with all that is survivorship. It's an important pillar of survivorship, but it's not the whole deal. The National Cancer Institute defines survivorship as anybody living after a cancer diagnosis through the balance of life. So in the old model, kind of the old way of thinking is that survivorship would start at the end of active treatment. And so when somebody was done with treatment and they were declared to be in remission, and it was heavily geared toward surveillance. And I think that's the history of why those terms began to be used interchangeably. But in that model, there's no place for metavivors. And so what happens in those cases that often the oncologist becomes the primary care clinician for the patient. And that's a lot of weight to be carrying. And metavivors need a whole team. And also, survivorship includes surveillance, but it includes all these different other aspects: whole health, metabolic health, vaccinations, occupational health, monitoring for long-term and late effects from ongoing treatments. And if you only start survivorship for a population of patients that have ended active treatment and are declared in remission, you leave out entire swaths of the cancer survivor population. So in the new model, one that I'm really peddling here, and I hope will grow kind of nationally, is that the care delivery starts at the time of diagnosis and is longitudinal along the way. It's focused on whole person health. So I believe that survivorship and oncoprimary medicine survivorship includes supportive care during cancer. And sometimes that's kind of like a palliative care model, but it can live in survivorship. It doesn't necessarily have to be palliative care. Survivorship also includes rehabilitation, so recovering from really intensive treatments, whether that's surgery or radiation, chemotherapy, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, recovering from the cognitive dysfunction and the neurologic changes that happen when people describe what's almost like a traumatic brain injury from the chemicals of that they receive for their cancer treatment. Survivorship is monitoring for long-term and late effects, so cardiovascular monitoring, and many other ways that all these treatments can affect the body 10, 20, 30 years out, even when people have been in remission for a long time, or if they're on ongoing active treatment. Survivorship is supporting individuals, personal definition of vitality. So what does vitality mean to you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? What defines quality of life for you? That is included in survivorship, and we should be doing everything we can to support each person's definition of vitality. Cardiovascular and metabolic health. I know that one of the things that I said about my bone marrow transplant was that Western allopathic medicine saved my life and it wrecked my health. So that's when I really began leaning into integrative oncology and the importance of, all the different modalities, alternative and complementary medicines, or integrative medicine, to support reestablishing vitality and health and well-being, and recovering metabolically from high-dose steroids, from rapid weight gain and liver inflammation or glucose issues that can happen as collateral impact from the cancer treatment. And that all is really important to improve long-term outcomes. And then relational health, talking to people about their marriage, some people's, relationships, not just marriage, but some people's relationships, whether that's romantic relationships or platonic relationships, communal relationships, are really impacted by the survivorship experience. And they need a narrative, they need help, they need to be connected with community-based organizations like AIM at Melanoma, to help them with ongoing, learning how to live after a cancer diagnosis. Things like Camp Kesem, which is a, free 5-day sleepaway camp for kids whose parents have been impacted by cancer, and occupational health. And so I just want to finish up here with also the narrative of humor in cancer, shattering norms in cancer care. Cancer is really serious and it can be sad and it can also be really funny at times. I love this quote. Stuff to do when you have cancer. Use a Nerf ball to see if your oncologist has a sense of humor. Um, One of my close friends, her name is Tati, and she's the one I was talking about who talked about bata language at her memorial service. She had something called an exotic IV pole dancer. When she was in the hospital for prolonged periods of time, she would decorate these really elaborate cardboard cutouts and mount them on her IV pole as if they were dancing on her IV pole. And she liked to use this as a barometer for the personality of care team members who came into her room, and how they reacted to that was going to determine whether or not it was going to be somebody that she would get along with. And she also she liked to wear radioactive pasties on her chest when she would go in for radiation oncology treatment, so that when the staff would open up her shirt to access her port, they would see the radioactivity label, and she liked to get a good laugh out of that. And that was in the last months of her life, and she incredibly found a way to infuse humor in the experience, and to be in touch with her vitality. So there's also this narrative that cancer can be an opportunity to re-examine one's life, that there can be these unexpected discoveries in cancer that are sometimes positive. And we need to allow people to express that. And also activism as medicine, connecting people with peer support groups, raising awareness in the community, are all ways that we can help people in cancer survivorship. So I thought these were also really funny. Because it's October, you have the choice of regular colonoscopy or pumpkin spice, or this one. We did a biopsy and the mole we removed, and it turns out it was just an old piece of chocolate. Warning, chemo farts are toxic. So it's been an absolute pleasure today. Take home points. You decide what language feels right for you. Take notes, engage in your process. You are the most invested in you. Be explicit about who is on your team and what's happening at each step, and you can define your own survivorship and help create the culture of survivorship medicine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sam. Some really good questions coming in which we will cover in the Q&A. Thank you again. Our second speaker, Sammy Mansfield, is a renowned expert in exercise oncology and lifestyle medicine consultant. As the founder of Cancer Wellness for Life, Sammy has dedicated her career to empowering survivors and clinicians through innovative, evidence-based programs to improve health outcomes. With experience in clinical practice, research, and consulting, she's pioneered sustainable wellness strategies which enhance accessibility and bridge equity gaps. Sammy is a contributing author to the American Society of Clinical Oncology guidelines on exercise, nutrition, and weight management, and has helped shape numerous state cancer control plans. She's the current chair of the cancer member interest group for the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, where she drives forward initiatives emphasizing the building the connection between science and implementation. Her patient-facing programs like Build and My Lifestyle Shift have transformed lives across the world. Sammy will be speaking with us about the 6 lifestyle pillars for melanoma and survivorship. Thanks so much, Sammy, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be here. And I think my talk really is a perfect timing on the back end of Dr. Siegel's talk, talking about the lifestyle medicine, because language really is important when we're talking about lifestyle. And as I talk about lifestyle and the different aspects of lifestyle, I also think it's really important for all of us here, whether we are a thriver, a meta thriver, we're in treatment, we're a professional, that just because we don't have a perfect lifestyle or we haven't even thought about what that means, that we shouldn't be shamed for that. That a lot of what I think lifestyle should also be joy, humor, happiness, things that we love. So we're going to talk about the pillars of lifestyle from the perspective of what they mean. I'm going to skip through some of the more scientific components of this just in the interest of time, really focusing on implementation. But let's start with really a highlight of what is lifestyle medicine from the sense of the clinical world. So, lifestyle medicine is truly a medical specialty where we have specialists that are certified in lifestyle medicine delivery that run lifestyle medicine clinics throughout really the world. The American College of Lifestyle Medicine is one of several big organizations, but our group is actually 1/3 global. And so we know that lifestyle medicine is really a global initiative. But I think it's important to know that as an individual, I don't always need to see one more medical professional or have a prescription, so to speak, for lifestyle. And that's really what I want to focus on today is how to give you some taste and access and tools for lifestyle that you could start with today. And we will actually practice a couple of these together. So there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, and you can see these on your screen. We're going to go through a little bit of what is each of these? What do they mean? What do you do? I have highlighted of the 6 pillars, 3 of them have evidence behind them in the cancer space. I will tell you that overall, the evidence is still lacking. And I don't know if that's going to change. You're going to ask me already, where's the evidence in melanoma? And I will tell you that we have studied melanoma in the context of large groups, but we don't have very specific cohorts of patients. And, I think the biggest thing that I will tell you is that what we do know is that these are successful, supportive, powerful interventions that we may not need randomized control trials to prove safety and efficacy, but I think we'll get there based upon what I'm seeing in the literature. Now, I do want to add that weight management is a key aspect of talking about lifestyle in the cancer space, but it is actually not a pillar. We will talk about it because it is an important discussion for the context of our conversation today. So, who can benefit from lifestyle? In the world that I work in, I have 3 big buckets. I think there's a lot of conversation of where this could go, but the main benefits that I want to focus on today are individuals with cancer that have had a diagnosis or going through treatment at any stage. We know lifestyle is very powerful for managing side effects and quality of life. We know that that's very individual, so I'm going to keep that a little bit general for now. We know that our cancer population is at higher risk for other diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, neurodegenerative disease like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And we know that these are very, very powerful interventions to improve the health outcomes of our patients after a diagnosis. We also know that the strategies are for physical function. This includes energy, fatigue, cancer's #1 side effect, but also weight and body composition, body image, and self image. And I think these are very important as well. Caregivers really benefit from having access to lifestyle, not only as a caregiver supporting their loved one or the person they're caring for, but for themselves. And so I do not want to forget the aspects of self care in this space. And then last, but definitely not least, I want to really reiterate the importance of lifestyle for professionals, especially in the healthcare space. We have seen through a lot of our research that individuals as healthcare professionals, such as myself, who's been in clinics, when we practice these principles, not only do we have better physical and mental health, we have less burnout, we have more resilience, we tend to be more comfortable talking to colleagues, peers, and patients about this as well. So no matter how or why you're here, this is definitely a talk that is going to be beneficial. So I like to start a lot of my kind of talks over the last couple of years by asking people, are we missing the forest for the trees? And what do I mean by that is simply this. when we focus on a tree, so to speak, in lifestyle, it might be, what is the diet I should follow? Biggest question I got when I was in clinical practice, even as an exercise professional. But CME, tell me, what should I eat? What's the nutrition look like? And I really want to remind you that there are certain trees in the forest that are very beneficial, but they'll be very individual. And so I want us to think today about stepping back and looking at the forest, because the path that you need to be on will come from this conversation today, and it's going to look differently for everybody. And I have my sort of chimpanzee picture up here because I want to say that often we get very distracted by that one thing, that one person, that one social media post that we hear that we think might be perfect. And I want to take a step back from that. And I want you to really intuitively listen also to yourself as we're finding our path throughout the forest. So let's get going on the 6 pillars, because this to me is why people are here. So we're going to go through all 6, and I'm going to highlight what this means. So first of all, from a nutrition standpoint, I started here because this is everybody's most popular question. And I used to get frustrated, and now I just feel let's start and let's really answer this question. So from lifestyle medicine, we focus in the cancer space on minimally processed and plant predominant. Now, what does that mean? Well, in the plant setting, that is going to be everything, of course, from fruits and vegetables, but also things like whole grains, seeds, beans, and legumes. We want to have a plate that's predominantly plants. And the reason why is because of the vitamins and the minerals, the fiber, the micronutrients that we get from having all of this diverse color on our plate. It really should be the predominant version. Minimally processed comes into play here because, yes, canned or frozen fruits and vegetables can be completely appropriate. Buying rice off the shelf, even maybe that little boiled, parboiled rice, completely appropriate. We just want to focus on as minimal processing as we can. Then we want to make sure that we're emphasizing from a nutrition standpoint the power of protein. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but often we forget that our skeletal muscle, that muscle that gets us off the toilet, out of bed, puts our socks and shoes on, gives us energy to go on with our day, as well as exercise, walk safely. Those muscles are only powered by protein. So fruits and vegetables are great, but protein is very important and the only thing that our skeletal muscles truly understand. We want to focus on as least processing as possible. So this really does seem obvious when we look at, burger, fries, chips, sweets, but I think that often processing is very, very sneaky. So I have an app for you that I'll share here in a moment to make this a little bit more fun. And then we want to think about having calorie balance. The average adult in the United States is consuming between 3,200 and 3,500 calories a day. And if we're eating a lot of processed foods, these calories are easy to consume. And this becomes a weight management challenge for our patients. Even living, as Dr. Siegel said, as a metaviver, I do care about body composition because it is your energy and keeping your body healthy to keep going through treatment. So, what are my top tips for nutrition? Well, I think if we're going to snack, these are great ways to have whole foods. So, I put on here, the cashews, the almonds, this could be peanuts, this could be anything that you can have that maybe has a little bit of a taste to it that you enjoy, but is a whole food. Fruits and vegetables also apply here. But I tend to think that snacks, we sneak to processed foods, and this is a great time that we can actually have whole foods. We also talk a lot about, well, if there is a nutrition plan to follow, what is it? And we lean a lot on the Mediterranean type diet. So that includes whole foods, but it also includes things like olive oil, cheese, yogurt, fish and poultry, and just limited red meat, especially in the space of discussing this with melanoma cancer individuals or even caregivers, like reducing risk of disease. And then for protein, it may be difficult as well as costly to get in protein through just whole foods. So, protein supplementation is completely appropriate and often recommended in the space of anybody that I'm trying to increase their protein intake. My goal is I want you to get as much good food as you can. And if it's not perfect, it is totally okay. Those ready to drink protein drinks can be a very, very easy, very economical, and tasty way to get into your protein. So how much do you use? I definitely encourage people, especially if they're having challenges with managing their weight, to speak to a dietitian or someone with nutrition experience. But overall, we are starting to push up the protein recommendations in our oncology space because we are starting to understand that skeletal muscle is so important because we are looking at longevity and we're looking at quality of life over longevity. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about getting enough protein. So we look at zero point 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. Okay. So something that you can kind of think about as a target. If not, you can also look at something as a 1-to-1 protein to carb ratio. You don't have to count, you can. You can also look at this from a portion perspective if it's more simple and easier place to start with. So I like to make food fun. And I recently came across, maybe about a year ago, an app. You can see it here on the screen in the top left with the little carrot. It's called Yuka, at least to my knowledge, that's how it's pronounced. It's an app that's completely free. It doesn't have any advertising. You can pay for a premium and it's $15 a year, but you don't have to, and you can have access to so many tools. What this app does, it allows you to scan the barcode of the foods that are on the shelves in your grocery store, or take it and kind of peek into your pantry, and it scores this food based upon predominantly processed ingredients or additives. So as you can see here, I have several little snapshots of things that I've taken pictures of, and you'll see that there's a little color code and a score, and then it starts to tell you why. And I think that's really helpful when we're learning about nutrition. So on the bottom left of your screen, you see 2 jars of peanut butter that I found at the Whole Foods. We live in downtown Denver, so often I stroll over to Whole Foods for a few things, and I have this obsession with seeing what's on the shelves. And so the other day I came across, as I was getting ready to grab a little bit of peanut butter, almost picked up the one on the right that says creamy peanut butter spread. And I've had to pause because the labels look so close to each other. And as a consumer, I might think, oh, no stir, great. But what I know about nutrition is a peanut butter spread is going to have something in it that's not just peanut butter ground nuts. So it's really important that we look at those labels, and the Yuka app can make this very, very simple for you, as you can see. And I picked all things that actually have general shelf stability. The bread per se is not going to be as shelf stable, but all of the other things can sit in your pantry for weeks to months without going bad. And they're all things that you can think about. The protein bar here, I like to put protein bars out because people ask me about what's the best protein bar. My answer is there really isn't a great protein bar. Most of them are actually not a lot of protein. This one has almost 400 calories and only 10 grams of protein. So, as an example, there is not a lot of protein in most of the shelf stable protein bars, but the Yuka app will help you discover that easily. So let's move to exercise. Yes, my favorite topic. However, exercise is not going to be without nutrition. So that's another reason I love to start with that. So rather than give the lecture of 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week, which is the recommendation for any of us on this meeting today, we should all be striving to achieve this, no matter what your diagnosis is, no matter where you are in that cancer trajectory or as a caregiver, we all should be striving to meet this. But I think that that number can be difficult to figure out how to do. So I want to give you my top tips, which are strength training or resistance training is the most important type of exercise we almost all should be doing. And that is because we need that skeletal muscle mass. I recommend 2 to 3 sessions per week. You may ask, how long? My response to you is, it depends on where you are, if you've started, how you feel. I would love for you to do at least 10 to 15 minutes trying to get a little bit of upper body, lower body in. I love multi-joint exercises. So rather than just an arm curl, let's do something where we might curl and press. So we're using more than one joint. But if you sit in your chair and do some curls with soup cans or water bottles, that's fantastic as well. I know we don't always have the perfect equipment, but I love these types of exercises. They have the most bang for our buck. Then I want you to think about things that are functional. Functional exercises are things that can replicate your activities of daily living or things that you do for fun. So, as an example, maybe you love taking care of your yard in the summer. Well, an exercise where you're having to lift something off of the ground, even if it's just extending my arms down and I'm holding a pillow is actually considered to be a functional exercise because it mimics what we want to do or need to do. And I think there's a lot of varieties around this. One of my simplest recommendations for functional is pick up a laundry basket, empty, throw maybe a pillow in there or put a soup can in there. Wherever your strength is, walk around your house. That is a functional exercise that builds strength, stability, and balance. Now, if you are having balance challenges, you may want to think about a lighter movement or a lighter apparatus or walk near a wall, but these are exercises that you can do on your own. I also put on here challenging. So I put the baby pink weights on because often we think, oh, someone with cancer, they should just take it easy and lift very light. Light is relative. I want you to stimulate your muscles. That might be body weight. That might be 5 pounds. That might be 15 pounds. And maybe picking up a bag of dog food. It's whatever is stimulating to you, but do not be afraid to challenge your muscles. Just find yourself in a safe position to do so. So I don't want you to be afraid of doing strength training. And in fact, in addition to the exercise recommendations we have for anyone on treatment, we have a lot of exercise recommendations that are starting to be in the advanced cancer population, particularly as an example with individuals with bone metastasis. Not only safe, but the risks of sedentary behavior far outweigh the risks on exercise. So I want you to feel empowered. And last but not least, you do need time for recovery. When we exercise, we break muscle down. We need time and nutrition to allow those muscles to build back up. So, what do you do to get started? Well, the first thing I tell people is just start. Don't worry about recommendations, just get moving. I love the idea of exercise snacks. These are 1 minute things that you can do anywhere, anytime. Again, it could be those arm curls, it could be trying to go up a few stairs, it could be sitting on a stool and standing up, whatever they may be. We're going to try a couple of things here, and I'm going to demonstrate them just from my chair with you in a moment. But I also recommend that peek around to see what's on YouTube or if there's virtual classes or programs. I know that often we don't want one more appointment, the time, the logistics, perhaps you have limitations for someone driving you. I truly believe that we have a lot of things out there that are available and they may not be perfect, but they can at least get you a starting place. And we as individuals know our body the best. And so sometimes just starting with something simple, starting with something less intense in the comfort of our home is a great place to start. Now, I always recommend that, especially if you have balance challenges, you have certain pain with movement, that you do seek supervision. And the reason why is often we don't know our movement patterns. So if you do, there's many, and especially here in 2024, 2025, cancer rehab programs and certified cancer exercise physiologists, cancer exercise trainers across the world. There are some resources that we can provide. They can even just give you a plan, one and done, or you can see them for ongoing. But it is honestly the gold standard. But I also recognize that there are a lot of access barriers. All right. So if you're short on time or energy, we're going to just do my quick little favorite, which is called a Tabata. We're not going to do all 8 rounds because I just want to make sure we get through all of the pillars. But I want everyone to sit up straight in their chair. If you want to stand up and do this, and you can. But what you're just going to do is you're going to start by just marching in place. So although you can't see my feet, I'm just picking up one knee at a time. You can see my hands moving. And we're going to just pick up our bodies in this functional way in a seated position. I'm working my abs, I'm working my thighs, I'm working my shoulders. If you want to make it even a little bit spicier, you can pick your arms up a little bit. Okay. And then we're going to rest. Now, as we rest for 10 seconds, and I'm guessing on time here because I want to make sure that you can hear me. I want you to squeeze your butt and I want you to relax. Now, I want you to squeeze your butt and relax. Now, notice when I do this, my shoulders are coming up because I'm tightening those muscles that I'm sitting on. Great job. We're all exercising. Let's do it again. Let's just march in place. You want, like I said, you can stand up with this. You can put music on. This can be intense or it can be slow. You can work side to side. I can tell my stool's turning. Good. Keep going. Let's do 5 seconds. And rest. Same thing. Squeeze your tush and relax. Pull those shoulders back, squeeze and relax. One more time. And relax. Great job. So that would be a form of exercise, which is just planned physical movement. And you can even call that an exercise snack should you choose. There's many ways to do it. But again, just think about getting started. So, pillar number three, I'm going to take a slight pivot on how we're going to talk about these pillars. Pillar three is stress management. This, in my mind, is one of the things that in cancer is always going to be present. It is extremely difficult for us to say, well, just don't stress. As we heard from Dr. Siegel's presentation, even for individuals that have perhaps an early stage cancer that are just in that surveillance or survivorship landscape, wherever that may be, that anxiety is real. And so that stress is going to keep coming back. We know that stress can be acute, short term, it can be in this moment, or it can be chronic, it can be long term. And quite frankly, most of us have a little bit of both every day. The severity obviously will change depending on the circumstances. But I also want you to think about there are healthy stressors and there are unhealthy stressors. So, healthy stressors include exercise. They include things like trying to learn a new topic, such as, say, a second language. They include things like taking a cold shower. They include activities of like getting out of your comfort zone. For some people, maybe speaking to someone on Zoom might be a healthy stressor. So, I think it's important to note that not all stress is bad. It is very individually defined. But when we experience stress, and this is important to know, we have generally three paths of response. And think about that thing that stressed you out, whatever that may have been. It might have been a short-term thing, might have been something with traffic or an appointment or frustration trying to make a phone call, or it might be managing your disease or the disease of a loved one. We, by human nature, do three things with our stress. We go into fight mode, we're angry, we're frustrated, we're moody, we're impatient. We go into flight, don't want to deal with it. I'm going to avoid it. I'm shutting it off. I can't make a decision about anything, or I freeze. And freeze can be anything from utilizing alcohol. It could be, I just need to scroll through social media, watch Netflix, stress eating, whatever that is for you. We all have a different way to respond to stress. What I want you to think about is a lot of stressors we don't have control on, but some stressors we do. Some of the stressors we self impose on ourselves. Perhaps, as an example, we are not as organized in a certain situation as we could be. We may be trying to do too many things at once and just sort of also not saying no. Over the last 5 years, I've learned I say no to many more things than yes, because if I say no to something, then it allows me to do a yes to something like this to be here with you today. But what is the most important thing you can do for stress? That is actually going to be breath work or breathing. Why? Because you can do it anytime, anywhere. It helps to lower your stress hormones and it allows you to have rest. There is so many different kinds of breath work. I give you several examples here on the screen, and I give you these examples because everybody likes to sample from a different modality of breath work. Sometimes we connect with certain types of breath work, like a yoga breath. Other times it's like, that's just not something that I can really stick to. One of my favorite types of breath work is to do a session of box breathing. And this is actually what you see on your screen and is actually used to help lower stress response and help provide calm. It's a great tool for sleep. It's a great tool when you're in a moment of going into anxiety to give you just a little bit of moment of stress relief. And we're just going to try one cycle of this together. So I just want you to get into a comfortable position. Just take a couple of normal breaths. And then we're going to inhale for 4 counts. We're going to hold for 4 counts. We're going to exhale for 4 counts, and we're going to hold our breath for 4 counts. And I just want you to see how you feel. Okay. So here you go. Let's get comfortable. You can close your eyes if you want to, although we can't see you. I want you to inhale 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're just going to do one more. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And relax. I often like to do 5 rounds of box breathing because it's easy for me to do the 4 counts on my own. And then I just count through the 5 fingers of my hand. When I worked in clinical practice and worked especially in radiation oncology or transplant, This was one of the things that I would do with patients and teach patients to do, because you can kind of do it anytime, anywhere. Even if you're driving and you don't have to close your eyes, it's a really simple tool that is very, very useful. And then as you can see, there's a lot of different aspects of breath that do a lot of different things that you'll be able to try as well. All right, number 4, sleep quality. Again, a little bit of a moving target. However, it is important to discuss because sleep is where, as an example, our muscles repair, our body heals itself, where our immune system is based. So it's very, very important for all of us to have sleep. What is quality sleep? You can see here, there's 5 bullet points to quality sleep. Although sleep health and sleep hygiene in the clinical world recommends all 5, I personally recommend striving for 3 out of 5 on a consistent or somewhat consistent basis. So you can see what these are. I think the last bullet, feeling refreshed when waking, is very subjective and very difficult to measure in the cancer space, even as a caregiver or healthcare professional. So I think that's really appropriate to just think we're very subjective here. What matters for sleep? Your routines, such as the time that you wake up, the time you go to bed, to try to be consistent. Things that you do in the morning, such as get sunlight, hydrate, try to move a little bit, have a positive or focused mindset of what you're going to accomplish that day. And then the same kind of thing on the bookend, your evening. I think often we just are busy doing things, or we just want to have that sort of relaxation time before bed, but we might be watching a crime drama on TV and we don't realize how that might stimulate our brain. We might be on social media. We might be texting or talking to somebody that makes us feel a little bit more anxious. So, one of the things I would love you to think about is your routine in the evening. And then stress management, we just talked about, is really critical for sleep quality, because a lot of times our sleep is impacted by our emotions. And then, last but of course not least, is exercise. Individuals that have regular exercise programs, even if it's 5 minutes a day, have reported much better sleep. There was a study that was published last year. It was a prospective or an after kind of reflective study in patients, and looked at 30 seconds to 1 minute of sit to stands before bed, improving sleep by up to 30 minutes, or the average was actually close to 30 minutes. So I always tell people, sometimes when we sit too much, it does negatively impact our sleep. So the fifth pillar is social connections, which I think by nature we know that this is important in the cancer space. However, this is all very difficult here in the lens of where we are in 2024, 2025. We are so disconnected, and the mortality of this disconnection and isolation is significant in individuals with cancer. Our mortality is much, much higher because of the isolation. We know that the level of isolation reported in the United States is equivalent to smoking a pack of cigarettes per day. And so I think that we do not realize how much that this is really affecting us. We have this on-demand life. We can do anything on demand, although it's great for today. And when we don't get out and do things, that's definitely a very challenging point. I think the 2 things that I want you to think about for social connections are: 1, having a strong social connection with yourself, your values, what's important to you, even in the moment today, if you don't want to think about this long term. What's important for you for the last remaining few weeks of this year? One of the most important things we can do is to be honest with ourselves. And then I want you to think about who is in your circle. So as a wife and a mom and as a professional, I don't always get to choose my circle. So I look for ways to build up the right circle. So I want you to think about my 4 bullet points, which is how you build a circle. What is it you need in your life to feel fulfilled and connected? And this could be, you need a little bit of everything, but often we need someone who listens, someone who we can just talk to, lay it all out, someone who encourages us, kind of our pep talk person, maybe somebody that inspires us, that helps us kind of get out of that moment of, okay, I can do this. Or, and honestly, I think this is sometimes happens a lot in these communities, that person that's going to nudge you for it, be, you can do this. And I think that's really important to think about: what is it you need as a person, wherever you are, and coming to join us today, what is important overall. All right, last pillar, unhealthy or risky habits. So the 2 that I don't think we talk about enough: number 1, sedentary behavior. I just wrote an article for at cancer organizations, and it's about sedentary behavior. And the average amount of hours of sedentary behavior in adult in the United States is 9.4 hours, and that was reported in 2022. And so when I thought about that, that just is very scary to me because we know the implications of just being sedentary and completely resting. Now you can do chair-based exercise. That does not count in sedentary behavior, but true sedentary behavior is definitely concerning and has poor health outcomes. Sugar sweetened beverages, yes, added sugars do count in this conversation, but I think it's important to kind of say that the research that we have is really looking at sugar sweetened beverages from something that we can measure. Alcohol, I kind of put tobacco vaping under here because I do believe most of us are asked about that on a regular basis, but I do think it's important to mention alcohol. No amount of alcohol is considered to be safe for someone after a cancer diagnosis. However, it's just important that you know that, and that is something that you can make personal choices on. And then I put unnecessary medicines and also supplements in this other bucket. We know that sometimes we're taking a lot of over-the-counter medications. I see this a lot in my space and exercise, people taking things like Aleve or Advil, those non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. Although they can provide pain management, and I think that's very important for individuals that may be having those joint pains or other overall pain, they are also very harmful and slow down the repair of both our skeletal muscle tissue, but our connective tissue. So it's just something that we want to think about as we're looking for pain management strategies. And then supplements, there are so many supplements out there that maybe have a little bit of benefit, but we're just not certain. And I really would like you to consider, why are we taking supplements? What are they for? Do we really need them? Because often they won't be risky, but they seem to be unnecessary, and they could have counter uh, conflicting. I'm missing the word, but they would be considered to be not healthy for someone that's on certain types of treatment as well. And then, of course, because we are speaking in melanoma, definitely want to remember that we want to be mindful of sun and sunscreen. All right, pulling it together, what do we know about the pillars of lifestyle in the melanoma space? Well, as I mentioned, lack of really solid research, but significant well-known benefits as we see melanoma patients in larger studies. We know that there's general health and well-being, both physical as well as mental. I didn't really get into the mental health side of lifestyle, but it is significantly growing with research that a healthy nutrition plan following what you learned in Pillar 1 has a lot of benefits, not only for things like cognitive function, but also reducing risk of neurodegenerative diseases that our patients have a much, much higher likelihood of getting. We also know that it can, as we mentioned, reducing the severity of many other chronic diseases. And there's no risk, there's no side effects for doing these interventions. Yes, people will argue with me, muscle soreness, sure, but in overall, we don't have any health risks. And no, and this is really important for most people that really want to think about doing and reducing treatment side effects, short and long term. So lastly, I love to throw this out there because it's a new space that we're starting to see. It's an ongoing in a newer field, but interesting and fascinating in my world, is really starting to understand that skeletal muscle, as we now understand it to be an endocrine organ, can actually help us really look at how treatments, especially immunotherapies, what is the efficacy of immunotherapy for someone that maybe has a certain amount of skeletal muscle versus someone who doesn't. So again, we're just starting to see glimpses in the power of having skeletal muscle. So by following these 6 pillars, you are finding yourself on the right-hand picture in that body composition, regardless of BMI, healthier body composition, more muscle, less fat tissue. That muscle is your engine of life. And so the more that we can understand how to improve that muscle, which by the way, you can do at any point on any treatment, any side effect, you can still improve your skeletal muscle. We just need to get started. So I think it's really an interesting field that I expect to have a lot more good things coming. All right, so where do I start? First of all, just pick 1 or 2 places. Don't start with all 6. Pick 1, maybe 2 if you get really excited about something that you can add on as an intervention. Focus on something that's simple, focus on accessible. If it takes more than 30 minutes to even come up with a plan to try this new thing, I think it's too complicated. we really want to look in habit change for things that we can do in just a few minutes. So downloading the Yuka app as an example, walking over to your pantry and scanning one thing, that is going to be way more successful than going through a deep dive of what are the best on-processed foods. So think very, very simple in what you can start with. Minimizing expense or time. The biggest thing that I am concerned about in all of lifestyle medicine is we make it very inaccessible. And I want that to not be the case because we understand the power of just small habit change. And then go back to considering don't lose the forest for the trees. Now, in the cancer space on the right, we talk about labs a lot. So if you're looking at wanting to do labs and doing fasting labs, these are labs that I want you to consider and then talk to your clinician about. These can be good measures of metabolic health, which also then helps us understand the overall health of our body and all of our cells. All right, so lastly, I put up, there's a lot of resources that I have. I think we'll share this. The AICR is a great organization. They did a couple of new infographics. Lifestyle Medicine, the College of Lifestyle Medicine has some patient-facing resources. And then I put out as an example for people looking for exercise on YouTube every Friday, a 5-minute video you can do from home. And I also put out some various things through social media that are all free, accessible on tips and strategies. So please connect with me. I put my email here if anybody has any specific questions or wants any specific research. Other than that, I just want to say how much I really appreciated being here. And I hope that this was valuable and you found some takeaways for you individually and things that you can share with others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sammy. I went and downloaded the nutrition app and did some exercises and sit stands during the talk. You probably couldn't tell, but I did. Thank you so much for telling us.
Awesome. You're welcome. Thank you.
So we had some questions prior to the symposium about nutrition, exercise, and weight management. So I look forward to covering that even more in the Q&A. Our next speaker is a dear medical oncology colleague of mine, Dr. Takia Trong. So Dr. Trong is a nationally known melanoma expert and the director of the melanoma program at Cleveland Clinic. She finished her residency at Columbia University and her fellowship at UCSF, and then was tapped to lead Kaiser Permanente's melanoma program nationally. She led the board of directors of the Association of Northern California Oncologists before moving to Cleveland Clinic to head their melanoma program. Dr. Trong will be speaking with us on supportive care and melanoma after treatment. Thank you, Dr. Trong, for joining us.
Thanks for that kind introduction, Ray. It's wonderful to be back here with our Kaiser Permanente community. Really nice to see everyone. Let me share my slide. Here we go. I will be discussing supportive care after treatment. And I love that I'm following Drs. Mansfield and Siegel in talking about what to expect on survivorship. Because it is very true that first and foremost, you want to thrive as a person, and many of the things that was brought up so far really apply at large. You know, how do you speak about the things that are important in your life? How can you thrive and live well every day? I will be speaking a little bit about some of the technical aspects that can come with treatment, but ultimately, you know, it's you as the whole person who we care about and who we want to do well. So this is just one part. So what all is part of melanoma treatment? So one part can be surgery. That applies to early stage melanomas where the tumor is contained. And you can see here, you know, that can be on your skin, can be a fairly large surgery or more limited. It can also involve lymph node evaluations. So to the left, you see a lymph node biopsy, or some of you have undergone more extensive lymph node dissections, meaning where they take the whole basin of your lymph nodes because there's concern that there's more advanced melanoma. It's a practice that's gone away, but for some, this is still at this time recommended. So it can be, you know, a significantly invasive part of your journey. Radiation can be a part of your journey. If you have bulky lymph nodes, this may be recommended after surgery. If you have melanoma in multiple sites of your body and some of them are causing pain, you might be recommended radiation. Or if you have it in the brain, it can be also radiation there. It can be in parts of your body that are more sensitive. So people with mucosal melanomas can be in your anal or vaginal areas. So, you can see here, it's high energy radiation delivered to a certain site. And it literally is a treatment by burning of tumor away. And then, of course, there's drug therapy, which is what I do. I'm a medical oncologist. The two main treatment classes that are part of standard therapy, either after surgery to reduce your risk of recurrence, or as frontline therapy or early therapy for advanced spread melanoma, immunotherapy and targeted therapy, specifically targeting the mutation that's driving melanoma, BRAF/MEK. Two landmark achievements that were driven in melanoma and immunotherapy really, while started and discovered in melanoma, have really changed the landscape of cancer care and now resulted in half of patients with melanoma living beyond 5 years who have spread melanoma. We have 10-year data now to show that people who've made it to 5 years, go on and do just as well 5 years later at 10 years. And that is just remarkable. These are some of the drugs that you might have heard about or seen or received. Yervoy was the first immunotherapy to be approved. It's an anti-CTLA-4 agent. There's Keytruda, pembrolizumab, nivolumab, Opdivo. And then most recently, the latest checkpoint inhibitor immunotherapy approved is relatlimab in a combination called Opdualag. You can also give targeted therapy and immunotherapy together. That's not as commonly done, but there is a triplet combination approved. Atezolizumab, vemurafenib, and cobimetinib, the brand name Tecentriq, Zelboraf, and Cotellic. And then many of you may also be offered the combination of ipilimumab and nivolumab. So many different ways to receive these very effective drug agents that have led to such amazing survival and improved survivorship and long-term stage 4 survivors, a term invented and coined in melanoma thanks to these amazing treatments. The combinations for targeted therapy you see here, some of you may have seen them. They can be given after surgery or for spread disease here as well. Dabrafenib, trametinib, vemurafenib, cobimetinib, or encorafenib, binimetinib. So what are some of the complications from these treatments? And what can we do to help them? You see here, lymphedema can be one from surgery and the lymph node surgery to the left. And then you see some of the side effects of radiation to the right for someone who had sort of a head and neck tumor. So one important part is skincare. It can be after surgery because you want your wounds to heal well. Here, an important part is to keep everything very moist so it can continue to heal and come back together. This is courtesy of my surgical colleagues here. Aquaphor or Vaseline is key. Keep everything very moist. Don't let it dry. And keep the wound clean. Avoid contact with water. Even massaging some areas, that for those of you who might tend to keloid or have contractions can help have the best functional and cosmetic outcome after surgery. And of course, sunscreen. It's a very sensitive new skin healing area. And, if there's sun damage, you can have discoloration later. And so covering the area up or using SPF is very important. You can also have issues after radiation. And even some of the drug therapies you'll see later will develop, can have drug rashes. And so one important part of having skin heal when there's either radiation damage or an itchy rash because of either immunotherapy or targeted therapy is creams and ointments, steroids specifically. You can see from the prior radiation rash, because it's so open and burned, that sometimes, it's an easy area that can get infected. And so use antibiotics there. For more deeper burns, it's silicone foam bandages. Less clear whether they help, but I know many colleagues in radiation oncology use it as topical therapies like aloe vera, hyaluronic acid if it's gotten very tough and fibrosed, silver sulfadiazine, which is similar to just treating it like a wound, and then silver nylon dressings. So, basically the strategy being that you try to calm down the inflammation and treat similar to the radiation, to the burn that it really is. How about lymphedema? We talk about that a lot. I mean, obviously, one way to manage it is to have a very thoughtful discussion with your surgeon whether you want such an extensive surgery. And I mean, there are many studies now that are trying to decrease the need to have to do such an extensive surgery where you might have swelling of a limb subsequently. The overall goal, once you have it, is basically to limit the progression of lymphedema. And that's a very important point. Many people at the beginning, are very active in sort of going with the plan to reduce the lymphedema, but don't realize that it's really an ongoing effort. And it's multimodal. And they call it a complete decongestive therapy. So you're really trying to get the fluid out. You want to reduce the lymph volume that's swollen from fluid not being sort of sucked back into the vessels because the lymph nodes are gone. And of course, you want to improve comfort because it can be very uncomfortable to have something so swollen. You want to be able to have better range of motion, by decreasing the swelling, and overall just better quality of life. The first phase is very active in the first 2 to 4 weeks, and some of you may have friends or family members who experience these symptoms from breast cancer surgery or other type of surgeries and down in the groin that may take out lymph nodes. You want to make sure that you take care of your skin and nails well because infection can drive a lot of swelling as well, so you don't want that. You'll be connected with a physical therapist who will teach you therapeutic exercises. They can also do manual massage and lymphatic drainage to get the fluid physically out. And they might teach you or your family members on how to do it for you. And then they do limb compression. So physically, you will be wearing very tight bandaging for 5 days a week to sort of reduce that. And so you can see already from what I'm describing is, you want as much as you can to not have it get to a point where it's too much. And then the second phase is indeed maintenance. And that is a very important part. You'll notice people recommending compression garments or self-compression bandaging, especially if you go into airspace where the air pressure may be different. They want to sort of conserve and optimize everything that you achieved in the initial treatment phase of those 2 4 weeks. Sometimes, there's relapses and then you can go back and restart with physical therapy, but you really, the earlier you intervene and maintain, the better you'll do long term. And so these exercises that you're taught in the first 2 to 4 weeks, you really want to keep doing those. Some people are quite good at doing their own manual lymphatic drainage. From drug therapy, I think the most well-known now side effects that might be long-term for someone who lives a long time are those related to immunotherapy. I always say, nothing's for free. If a treatment can give you ongoing control of your tumor because it's activating immune cells against your cancer, Well, unfortunately, those same immune cells can also end up attacking you, and some of those side effects could potentially be long-term. It's not very common. We're talking about a risk of less than really 10% that are really long-term and debilitating, if that. But I think the concept that really anything in your body could stand to potentially be attacked by these immune cells that are activated by your treatment is important. And I like the schema because you can see really literally every organ, either hormonal, neurologic, in the eye, in the lung, in the gastrointestine, can potentially be inflamed, and they manifest very differently. Here you can see a rash, redness of the eye. And so really when you are going through treatment, or even up to a year later, be prepared that this may occur. We talk about, it can really affect any organ type. It can be mild to severe, short-term, and then resolve. And when you stop treatment, like I said, in some people, it can be severe enough that it's long-term, and can continue then after you stop treatment even, and as you know, immunotherapy, even for its effect on cancer, will, once your immune cells are activated, will continue to do so even after stopping treatment. We all in the field always say our most famous patient with melanoma is President Carter, who just recently this year celebrated his 100th birthday. It just recently shared the details of his treatment course, and he only got 6 months of treatment, and that was 9 years ago, when he was 91. So, it's very powerful. And these effects are not dose related. So there's still a lot of research to be done. Obviously we're very thrilled to get the anti-cancer effect, but how can we better live with some of the immune side effects that occur? This is sort of a schema for you to get an idea of what to expect in terms of when throughout your course, because it'll be something that you're going to be communicating with your treatment team. And so the most common side effects occur relatively early, and those are sort of itching, skin related things. You'll see the things related to the gastrointestinal tract, like diarrhea, occur early but then go away. So if you don't get it in the first 3 months or so, it becomes less and less likely that you will. The hormonal side effects, on the other hand, you see the green curve here, peak much later. So they tend to be later side effects. They're much less subtle. They're not unlikely for you to be going to the hospital, but they're there. And then again, the liver and lung side effects here are early. The general approach here is that you want to just monitor your symptoms closely, especially in the first few months of treatment, where severe side effects that might end up in the hospital can occur. And you want to work with your oncologist and their whole team to communicate any new changes pretty quickly, so that they can intervene early. That's really key. An immune side effect, can really evolve quickly from one day to the next, because it's just a full immune activation, similar to, let's say, a peanut allergy. It doesn't really wait around. You're going to have a full-blown one, or you're not going to have one. And so, it's not something that you want to sit on and wait. As the symptoms become more severe, your oncologist actually may reach out to some of their subspecialty colleagues to help work with you to calm down your immune system, because depending on the organ type, it can really be very different. And this is sort of the schema here, for you to see. Grade 1 down here is a very mild side effect and may not mean anything. Grade 2, grade 3, grade 4. So it just gets more and more severe. And as it gets more severe, the treatments are considered to calm down your side effects will escalate. And so there's steroids that you take by mouth, and then if you're hospitalized, it's very common that other specialists will get involved. This is something we do here at the Cleveland Clinic and many other centers. And at Kaiser Permanente, there's actually also a system of specialists who have a specific interest in immune-related side effects. They're scattered sort of throughout Northern California. You know, you can see here they can come from multiple specialties. So if you have joint aches related to immunotherapy, you might see a rheumatologist. If you have lung inflammation, you'll see a pulmonologist. If you have hormonal side effect, it'll be an endocrinologist. And you know, they need to. It's important that they know that you are someone who's had cancer, who got immunotherapy, because the same strategies to calm down your immune system if you didn't have cancer are going to be different, because obviously you just worked so hard to activate your immune system to get a long-term response against your cancer. You know, just tamping it down, you know, carte blanche, you don't want to do that. So you want to work with the whole entire team to find just the right balance for you that's okay for you. And of course, I have to highlight AIM's resources here. You know, there's this AIM with immunotherapy a website, and it's just wonderful resources to understand those side effects better and how to manage them. And I actually love that about immunotherapy. It's a really very collaborative process as you go through treatment between you and your physician and your treatment team. And these are really great resources for you, and I highly encourage you to go look at them. And some of those may be relevant even after you start treatment. Excuse me. So the other class of agents are the targeted therapy side effects, meaning they target a specific mutation rather than your immune system. And here the side effects come from your body the drug reacting to other things in your body that looks similar to this BRAF/MEK target. And so esoteric side effects can be a fever, sometimes quite high, up to 103, 105. Joint aches, can have abnormal organ function like liver or kidneys. Can also have a rash. It can be actually quite similar to an immunotherapy rash, which you just look at it. It can be itchy, it can look like acne. Diarrhea can also feel similar. It's quite watery, many bowel movement, nausea. The other things that are more esoteric to it and specific to it is there's a paradoxical development of non-melanoma skin cancers, although by doing the combination treatment with a MEK inhibitor, that's significantly reduced, but that's another reason why it's important to stay in contact with your dermatologist. And then in a very small group of people, it can reduce your heart function, which is why, you know, those of you who've been offered this treatment are asked to do a heart ultrasound. Now, the key to this treatment class, as opposed to immunotherapy, is if you reduce the dose or you stop the drug, the side effect goes away. And so I'm not going to talk about long-term management here. You know, this is really more just knowing that the side effects are there, and excuse me, and that they're dose related, meaning if you reduce the dose, you are going to feel better. If you hold the treatment, the side effects usually go away in a few days. So that's a very key difference. So it's usually not long term. If you are on treatment long term because you have spread melanoma and you really need to stay on treatment, you know, your treatment team will connect you again with specialists, different treatments so that you tolerate the treatment better. And it's going to be sort of a balance between what dose you take and what supportive strategies you use. What else can change with treatment? What can we do? And so, you know, we saw that really any part of your body can be involved in treatment between surgery, radiation, and drug therapy. And so some people experience cognitive changes, maybe because they got brain radiation, or maybe just because of where the location of their tumor is, if they have brain metastases. They can still be cured long-term, like President Carter, because their immune system can reach the brain. 50% of patients actually get a response in their brain. However, the initial damage from having something there can lead to cognitive changes. Anyone with cancer, and I love Dr. Siegel's initial talk, you know, can have, it's a really emotional journey. You know, and until you really know whether you're okay, there's a lot of uncertainty. And so anxiety and depression are common. They're not direct side effects of your treatment, but this is what you might be experiencing as you go through it. And actually, I've had some patients where this is actually harder once you finish treatment, because then you just aren't as busy and you can really sit and think about all the different impacts that have been on you. And so you want support for that. Your physical fitness may change, depending on where your tumor was or what your recovery was like after surgery, or maybe even after radiation, depending on which part of your body, received this burning treatment. And your healthcare maintenance may change. You can see for hormonal changes, you could have diabetes or other things, and your sexual health, and so of course pain management, depending on where your tumor was or how your surgery went and recovery. But there's actually solutions to all of it. So, we want all of you to do very well and be at your best. And so there's strategies like memory training, organizational aids, occupational therapy, speech therapy. There's a lot of tools to help you function better, no matter where along your journey you are. I always bring up psychotherapy and behavioral oncologists on behavioral oncology psychologists and psychiatrists are now available. I love that there's been specific attention brought to this area because, it's a different, you have a reason why you're feeling these things, and that reason will be with you. And so it's great that people are acknowledging that this is a real impact on anyone's mental health. I love Femi Mansfield's discussion of exercise. Hopefully that and a good diet will be, there's really something all of us should be doing. Sometimes you need a little extra help. I saw one of the questions was, well, I'm on steroids, I really gained a lot of weight. And so sometimes you need a little more. And so please reach out to your providers. There's medical weight management courses. There's other weight loss help now. So definitely don't think that anything of that is expected. We want you to come back to your baseline or better as much as possible. You do always need insurance. So good access to preventive medicine is very important. If you're going to live and be a long-term 10-year survivor and longer for melanoma, guess what? You go back to the pool of all regular people, which means we want to have you have all your medical issues be best managed as possible, your preventive screenings, all your labs. And so nothing's for free. And yeah, there can be urologic and gynecologic specialists to help if there's complications in your in terms of sexual health or urologic function following melanoma treatment. I love support groups, and AIM has many. They can actually address all of this together. And so the take-home message here is really any treatment for any cancer, but especially melanoma, which is multimodal, can have side effects, and they can be long or short. You want to talk to your treatment team throughout your journey because there's many tools to help at every stage of survivorship. So don't think because you're done with treatment that there's no help when no one thinking of you. And you may end up seeing more team members beyond your immediate treatment team. So just let everyone know what your concern is and they can connect you to the right resources. Ultimately, living and thriving with melanoma is living well in all aspects of your life. Okay, I think that's really a key message here. So please share questions through the chat, and I'll give the microphone back to Dr. Luke.
Thank you, Dr. Trung, for helping us understand the science of melanoma and supportive care, and for being one of the leading oncologists in the country, helping us move forward in the field. I want to turn now, finally, to Ann Taylor, the Director of Community Engagement at AIM at Melanoma Foundation, who will say a few words about patient resources at AIM Melanoma, and then we'll get to the question and answer. Very excited about that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liu. I know that we've had a lot of questions that came in before the symposium and several that have come in during our symposium. I want to encourage people to continue to put your questions into the Q&A tab. But in the meantime, I'd just like to spend a few minutes talking about AIM at Melanoma and our resources. Our mission since our founding has been to do two things. One, to fund those efforts that we think will move us as quickly as possible to a cure for melanoma. But in the meantime, we want to be supporting people who are living with melanoma. And so, Eric, if you'll help me here and pull up my PowerPoint, then I want to go through some of the resources that can be found on our website. While he's pulling up my PowerPoint, I want to thank Dr. Trong for mentioning our side effect management guides, because I think that those are a very important part of what we offer on our website. I want to point to you to some other resources that are available on our website that I think are particularly useful for people who have completed their treatment journey. If we can go to the next slide, please. So I want you to know that we have a new section of our website dedicated to survivorship. And so it talks on here about a lot of the things that have been discussed today, in particular about building a survivorship care plan. And there are resources on there for you to go to so that you can develop a systematic plan for doing so. And if you look here to the left, you'll see that there is a section here on caregiving. We know that caregivers also go through treatment with their loved ones, but in addition to that, there is post-treatment, and how do we support the people that we love after they have completed treatment? So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that information is there for caregivers. If we can go to the next slide. We have a wonderful service called Talk to a Medical Expert. We have a medical, a PA who works in oncology, who is available, and her name is Melissa Wilson, and she is available to ask questions. And she does receive many questions from survivors about what they should be thinking about and doing now that they have completed treatment. So I want to invite you to send your questions to Melissa. Next slide. We talked about peer support. We have a program called Peer Connect. It is a one-on-one connection with someone who has completed their melanoma treatment. Typically, the people who apply for mentors are people who have just started their treatment journey, but we have a growing number of people who reach out to me after they have completed treatment. They'd like to know another survivor. They'd like to talk about, what does it feel like to be in a post-treatment space? And so I want to encourage our survivors that are viewing this today to consider reaching out for a mentor, but also we have caregiver mentors. So they offer information to caregivers that are in the process of supporting their loved one, to talk about the kinds of things that are most successful during that phase of treatment. And then I want to take just a minute to acknowledge that we still have loss in melanoma. And so we have caregivers that reach out to us after they have lost their loved one, and they're looking for someone that can offer them encouragement and support during the time when they are grieving. And we have caregiver mentors that are happy to offer that support. Next slide, please. We have a wonderful podcast called Beyond the Clinic. The focus of our podcast is on living and thriving with melanoma, as it says there. It is on the emotional journey that a diagnosis with cancer is. And we have 3 people with us today that have been instrumental in the success of this podcast. The first is Dr. Trong, who was one of the individuals who was responsible for putting together this podcast and deciding, what direction it would take. We have Dr. Liu, who was our host for the first 3 years. And then we have Dr. Sam, Dr. Siegel, excuse me, we like to call her Dr. Sam, who will be taking our podcast into the future. She has begun hosting our podcast, and will begin those episodes will begin airing in 2025. So what do we talk about? We talk about all the things that we've talked about today, the anxiety that people have about building a supportive community, in particular with melanoma, about dealing with fears related to the sun, all kinds of things. And so I invite you to come to our website and find those episodes and listen to some of them. Next slide, please. And lastly, we have lots of education. Some of them are in the form of webinars, but then also we have 10 melanoma symposiums a year. What we do at the end of these symposiums is 2 things. One, this symposium and all of our symposiums are available as a whole unit both on our YouTube and Facebook Live pages. In about 30 minutes, you would be able to watch this symposium again, or to share it with others that you feel like that would benefit from the information that we presented today. And then in addition to that, we take each one of these individual presentations, edit them, divide them by topic, and we memorialize them on our website. And if you have signed up today, once that we have done that editing and placed them onto our website, you will get an email from us that gives you the opportunity to go in and watch any of the presentations that you'd like to see again. Okay, next slide. Okay, that's all from me today. And so if there's anything I can do to help you navigate our website or answer any questions that you have, I've put my email information into the chat. And now I'm going to hand the symposium back to Dr. Liu for our questions.
Thank you so much, Anne. There's so many great questions, and I'm going to cover some topics. And so if we could have all our experts, turn on your cameras. And Sammy, I'm going to start with you because there's like so many questions before and during the conversation about, nutrition, exercise, weight management, things like that. And I guess I want to just go to like the other sentiment we're hearing a lot, which is it feels so hard to connect sometimes. And we'll go to about the care team, but how do we connect with ourselves to get motivated to do this, right? Are there free, like, is there, like, can we do this?
I think, unfortunately, motivation just doesn't really come with it just doesn't come when we don't feel good. So I really encourage people to say, you know what, accept the fact that you're probably not going to feel like it, like many aspects of cancer, and just really focus on a small, simple habit that you can put into your day and just start with that. So I think that it's motivating when we can get in groups. So perhaps that would be, a tool, but that is a barrier for people. Like, what do I join? How do I talk to someone? So I think really, first and foremost, I really encourage people just to focus on finding one or two habits, find an accountability buddy, or, put it in maybe like a log or a journal or something that's just you can we talk about the Jerry Seinfeld method, put a calendar on your fridge, give yourself a nice little, X or black star, whatever it is during the day. But unfortunately, I don't think motivation comes for any one of us, right? Like until we get into the habit. So I think that's probably my first and foremost recommendation. But often that's why I recommend go out on YouTube and see what's out there and see what inspires you. Because even in food, there's a lot of really cool things.
Well, I think one of the things that really struck me was your emphasis on like strength and exercise, which, of all those things, we talk about nutrition sometimes, but exercise is also something it sounds like the science is really progressing on. And then you touch on loneliness, which I think is a huge issue
Yeah.
post-COVID. We've really felt that in the healthcare system on the medical side, the care delivery side. And maybe can you speak to like, how do social connection, it's like even for things like
Mhm.
grief and
Yeah.
all those things that are affecting us, like it seems like social connection could be one of the huge solutions we really haven't tapped into, or how do we even do it? How do we get started?
I think I would go back to that little list of like what are those things for you individually that help you feel connected? I can say that as someone who has been really fortunate to experience different parts of the world in a different way, I see it everywhere, right? Like technology is one of the biggest hindrances to social connection, yet we think, oh, we can connect. So I think for first and foremost, we need to kind of take a pause and say, okay, what do I need as a person to feel connected? And what do I need as a person to feel heard or happy or whatever word that it is? And it's identifying that gap first. If you need someone just to listen to you, do you have someone in your circle? Do you need to seek out psycho-oncology? Is there a therapist? Is there a group? First of all, we need to identify what it is we are wanting to start with. I guarantee that we all have something, but most of us lack a lot. I mean, I have a great spouse, but I'm assure you that he doesn't want to just listen to all of my stuff, right? And we all have that kind of thing. So, but I think first of all, we just don't know what we want, but we need to start somewhere. It is going to be uncomfortable. It is going to feel awkward to try something. If you don't want anything to do with cancer, so I will tell you recently, this was maybe earlier this year, I joined a book club. I didn't want to organize a book club. It was not anything health related. I love health related stuff, but I joined a book club and it was like this women's book sort of not even a Brene Brown thing, Dr. Siegel. And I was like, listen, I'm going to do it and commit to it. It was painful to start, but I just found I liked the community and it felt very easy to show up at the book club. I didn't have to do a lot. So I think sometimes we should just look for fun stuff. And I think that could be a really cool way to connect. Yes, it's virtual, but it's a lower barrier than to be like, I don't feel like going out today. So I think we need to maybe rethink about what makes us happy as this point in all of our lives.
And I think that that's relevant to caregivers too, right? Because a lot of things we do in terms of exercise, breathing, book clubs
Yes.
are available for everybody, and that can improve the sense of wellness and give you some space. Um, that's great. There's a lot of questions in chat about melatonin, so I'm going to send that over to Dr. Trong, our expert. I'm going to ask you two questions, Takia. One is about specifically about melatonin because there's questions about whether that's okay to use, and then number two, and if it's helpful for sleep and things like that. But number two, what do we do when there's no evidence? Because there's a lot of things out there we have a lot of evidence for, we're generating a lot, but what do we do when there's those unknown spaces? How do you really talk to your patients about it?
Well, melatonin is a good example. I think always think about what it is that you're trying to use, and try to be as scientific as you can about it. So, I mean, melatonin is over the counter, but it is a hormone, and we know that it controls your sleep cycle. So, I think if your problem with sleep is related to whether you know that it's night or day, for example, if you're jet lagged, then melatonin can be helpful. But if you're not sleeping because you're worrying or something else, or you're in pain, then it's not addressing your issue, and so and then it is a hormone. And so many people don't even want to drink milk that has hormones in it. So I'm a less is more, so I love that part of Sammy Mansfield's talk as well. If you're taking a supplement, think about why you're taking it and what it is and what will it do for you. So I think that's how I would answer that.
Thank you so much. So I know there's just so many areas where we haven't created the evidence, and thank you so much for helping us get closer each time. I think I want to sort of turn to Dr. Sam Siegel. So there's a lot of things that we could solve maybe by talking a little bit about language, which is so we have a lot of questions around surveillance. When's the right time to say to that surveillance is done? When can I, what does it mean to be cancer free? When can I use that language? Is it okay to use that language? There's this language of staging where, if, should I feel guilty that I'm stage one or not feel guilty that I'm stage four? Like there's a lot of language that we use, some of it technical, some of it not. The cure language is particularly hard to talk around. So I want to just open up the forum for you to talk a little bit about how you handle that language. How do you help people think through it?
Whew, that's a hot one.
We the hardest for last, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think first of all, how you feel is how you feel, and there's no one stage that correlates with how afraid that it's okay to feel. So if you feel afraid and you're stage one and you have what's considered to be curable disease, it's still okay if you feel afraid. And I think trying to decide whether or not you're allowed to feel afraid based on whether or not your cancer is considered curable, I just don't think that's going to help you to actually cope with the fear. Because fear, it's an emotional experience. It's not like a logical thing. So you can't talk yourself out of it saying like, well, I have curable disease and therefore I shouldn't be afraid. So, and I actually learned that the hard way too, personally. Yeah, I had this sort of devastating thing that happened after I finished all 6 months of treatment and with my first, and I was considered highly curable, 90% cure rate, and my kids sang me happy no more chemo and end of treatment, and within a month relapsed, and it was like the worst thing ever. So, when subsequently finishing treatment the second time, I just personally, I didn't even feel comfortable saying cured or cancer free. I just sort of decided to quietly move forward in my life and like not even use those kinds of words because it didn't help me. And sort of along that note, I think practically speaking, a lot of people start talking about being considered cancer free when they have no evidence of disease, sort of at the 5-year mark. But what I think a lot of people are really asking with that question is, when does it feel safe? Like, when can I feel safe again? And so that is a very different thing than when you considered like officially cancer free, that there's some like finish line that you've crossed, where you don't feel afraid anymore. Because for a lot of people, I think the fear exists well beyond the point at which we have like stopped surveillance and considered somebody to be cancer free. So that's really important to just know that and have that language so that you can kind of be in touch with that and connect with others, whether that's groups or psycho-oncology about that. Um, and um, and I think along those lines, in terms of when you're done with surveillance, I think that for people who follow with somebody who has an awareness of cancer survivorship, that takes some of the pressure off of how long to surveil. Because even if you've technically finished with the surveillance scan or the exam at a certain year, if you're followed by somebody who you're not going to have to try and convince whether or not to take your symptoms seriously, then that could be really empowering. So, for example, in our model, one of the things that I tell almost every single patient is that I have three buckets when somebody has a symptom, and they're a cancer survivor, either with active disease or in remission and maybe even years out. I'm thinking the three buckets are: is this symptom cancer related? Is this a recurrence? Is this a progression? Is this a second cancer? Or the second bucket is this related to the treatment that you had for the cancer? Like, is this a delayed immunotherapy effect that you can have even a year or two out from the end of your last immunotherapy treatment? Or is this something totally unrelated? Because sometimes cancer survivors can get a cold and that has nothing to do with cancer. So those three buckets, and just being really transparent about thinking about those things and holding those possibilities together. And I think I just see people like, ah, okay, great. Like, I'm working with somebody who understands the things that I'm thinking about. Of course, every cancer survivor is thinking about, is this cancer related? And if you just put it out there in the room that we're going to like work through the different possibilities together, then hopefully you find a way forward where you're kind of working through those possibilities in a thoughtful way, but also not over testing people and just like scanning them all the time. Because one of the things that I've realized doing some work in the FCR, or fear of cancer recurrence space, is that, um, the relief from having a negative scan or a clean scan is not durable. Meaning, like, sometimes people get a scan, they'll get a scan on Friday, totally clean. Maybe they feel great for a couple days or a week, and then it starts creeping back in again. So like, the just frequently scanning people is not the answer to like coping with the fear. I think the fear still happens even years out for some people. So having a toolkit for like breath work, or ways to distract yourself, or to just like hold on to that fear and grief of what you've been through, might be even more effective, along with following with somebody who's really going to take your symptoms seriously, and you're not going to have to convince them about whether or not you could be having a relapse or some kind of complication from treatment.
Great. I think what I would like to do is sort of open it up to all three of our experts, really to dive in, to take to the next step of that language question, and really, because I think there are many of the other questions we have, and I know we're sort of running towards the end of the time, but is really to again, things that we may or may not have evidence for example, estrogen use, and safety around that. Some of the evidence we have on exactly how often the surveillance is. I know there's exciting new science around ctDNA, so maybe that's going to help us. Blood tests can help us, but ultimately, there's a space of unknownness, and there's also a space of needing to have control and healing. And so I want to just throw that out there to each of you. How do you feel that our audience, like, if we need to start retaining a sense of control, trust in our healthcare system, right? That's a theme here. How do I build trust with my healthcare system? What kind of advice do you have for our audience here? How do we do that, and how do we start that healing process? So, Sammy, I think we started with you, so you want to go first.
I would love to go. So if I look back, like if I think about like the review mirror of my career back in 2003, it was before we really had any evidence on the safety and efficacy really of exercise in any population, right? And so I think about this as I'm working with clinicians and I'm working in the kind of patient front. What I really believe is that both clinicians, and I'm thinking broadly clinicians, not just oncology teams, as well as patients, understand the value of the pillar of lifestyle as part of the conversation. But I think that the prioritization is going to look very different depending on what we're dealing with, what the time point is, what the interest is, etc. But I don't think that we can ignore the opportunity to have a conversation. And I tell patients and caregivers, it's okay to ask your physician. It's also okay that they may not know the answer because most of our clinicians are not trained in exercise and nutrition and the psychosocial side of this. That's why we have experts and other resources. But I think that often both sides are waiting for the other to have the conversation, but it's always something that when you have that conversation, people, oh yeah, that's good. We don't know exactly how much, but that's okay. We don't have to be prescriptive. And so I just really want to say that have the conversation, ask the question, be curious, don't feel like you shouldn't ask your physician about this. I think it's a great conversation that I think clinicians are interested in knowing what their patients care about. But I also say that when working with clinicians, they may not know if they should ask the patient about it because there's so many other barriers and they're just concerned that they're adding one more thing. Yet I think that there is something empowering about giving a patient and caregiver the one little tip of like, here's a great app to scan your food labels to make a better choice within, say, your budget and your time. Here's one little thing that you can do at home. Here's a stress management piece. So I think that we just need to start opening up the conversation and remember that clinical care is going so fast that it's going to keep going until, which is good, but this is never going to really be the front of mind. And we have to all kind of open that door. So I think it's just talk about it and be open about it.
Great advice. And I also want to remind everyone that we also have, of course, melanoma. So if you wanted an independent support through that, they have resources and, of course, someone to help as well with those medical questions that are coming through. And it sounds like, and we need a book club as well with the melanoma.
Sounds like it.
Coming in. So Takia, what do you think about, like, again, evidence is moving so fast. How do we make sure our patients are connected with us in a way that they feel trust and empowerment, and also to be able to say those things to us and ask us questions? How do we build that trust with our patients, and what are your thoughts on how we do that?
I think I'll echo the comments made, which is, to be open and discuss what we know and what we don't know. And I do that, because we never know everything. And I mean, the beauty of that things are moving forward is that there is still so much to do and so much to learn. I think the best decisions are made if you understand all the stakes. And that's constantly evolving. And so I think a big part of any medical visit is to, for both people, the patient to talk about what they're worried about, so you can understand, and then the provider to explain what they do or don't know, and together you make a decision together. And that's in the room. I love Dr. Sam bringing up, well, what do you take home from what's discussed in the room, and how much of that is certain and how much of it isn't. And so I think this is where I love that AIM is there for patients, because it takes a village to fully process what's, scientific, to take that into your life. We all can read a book, but what do we take from it, right? And so a lot of it is philosophical too. I mean, I love how Dr. Sam sort of described a spectrum. And I mean, it's sort of like, I'm not a gambler. I will admit I'm very risk averse. And there are some people who go bungee jumping and there's no fear of death. Oh, I can't even get up a spire. So, know who you are and sort of admit to yourself who you are, I think, and then try to find the tools that help you with who you are. Like, for example, if I make a decision, I want to know everything. That's how I feel good about my decision. If you're someone who's like, wow, I'm gonna go blah, blah. So, you see what I mean? So I think some of it is fine. In that way, I've had people come back to me and say, Dr. I feel better about my life now after cancer. Because it really forces you to know yourself and be with yourself, you know. So that can be something very positive out of something obviously very difficult. I mean, I don't know, Dr. Sam, how you feel, but I certainly feel that's true when I hear you speak about your journey, and you're really an inspiration. So thank you for sharing all your thoughts.
Dr. Sam, take us home. It sounds like, we talk about language, we talk about personal experience. We're talking about growth here, and how we understand who we are through that journey. So, Sam, take us home.
Yeah, I think that that was a beautiful thing to touch on, and that's why in my talk I talked about unexpectedly positive things, and that's different than toxic positivity, like having a good attitude or cancer is a gift. But I hear time and again, and I definitely feel this in my own life, that the way that um like going through cancer has transformed people's relationship with themselves, the relationship with humanity, that they learn things in that, if they allowed themselves to have an openness to it. Some things were dark, some things were really beautiful, but the things that can be learned through walking through that, especially with a post-traumatic growth mindset, can be life altering, and for some people it's in a really beautiful way. Um, I mean, I certainly wish that I didn't have to go through what I went through in my life to get to where I am now. And yet, how I experience my physical body, my relationships, like authentically living my own life and my truth is way better than it was before. I feel much more in alignment than I was before I got sick. And that's sort of my narrative. And I just encourage people to figure out, like, what is your narrative? What is your truth? I've been heavily influenced by Kelly Turner's Radical Remission. I think it's such an amazing book, that gives like a language and a framework for the mental and emotional aspects of cancer and cancer narratives, to just sort of examine, like, what is your truth? Is this trying to show you something? Is there something in this for you? And of course, there's the practical aspects, and it can be awful, and the side effects and the procedures. But is there something in this for you, that could be an opportunity to sort of re-examine your life, to get into realignment again? And I think that people who are able to make that leap, it's a little bit less painful. It still can be extremely painful, but it's a little bit less painful, and they are able to find moments of contentment, and connection and functionality. So, and I think just bringing it home, one of the things that really, or one of the sort of things that helped me heal was to just really get out of my comfort zone. I got into all kinds of weird things trying to heal from cancer treatment. Like, I did ecstatic dance, which is this like really weird hippy dippy. You don't talk to people. You're like dancing by yourself, but in a group of other people, helping to feel like more grounded in the physical body again. And like, I noticed that when I was dancing, it was one of the only times like I didn't hurt in my body. And with the neuropathy, I started knitting as a way to like rehab my brain and using both hands, coloring, painting. I joined peer support groups, which I originally thought was going to be really sad, and depressing for me, and actually improve the quality of my medical care at times when I didn't feel empowered to challenge my doctors or to like second guess things and get other opinions. And it was like other patients in my support groups that said, no, you have to either like break up with this person or confront them, or like, just you can't just accept that. And you can't go, like, if you are afraid to talk with your medical team, I think that's a poor prognostic indicator for your outcome. Like, if you're too afraid to ask questions or to speak up, then it's time to get a different medical team, that you can work with as a team. So I think those are some of my main learning points, and I'm just like so overcome with awe and gratitude that I get to live and practice medicine in this way with all the things that I've seen and learned in the cancer community as a conduit. So great seeing you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam, for helping us with that final thoughts. And also to remind everyone that they're, to look for, other folks in the community that can help you too, right? That goes to peer support, but again, to AIM Melanoma. So that's a wrap for today's symposium. Thank you to all our speakers, to AIM Melanoma for hosting this event, and for everyone in the audience for sharing your thoughts and feelings. So please check out all the resources on AIM Melanoma site. And a special thank you to our listeners of the Beyond the Clinic podcast series, the patients, the caregivers, and community for coming with me on our healing journey through the years. I am truly blessed to have been with you over those years, and thank you for coming to the symposium today. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good day.